Assalamu alaikum everyone, Afzal Bacha is here, and today in this video I'm going to discuss the entity relationship model. When we discuss the entity relationship model, we usually discuss the conceptual view of the database, okay? And the entities are usually the real world entity. We take it from the real world, okay? For example, student, teacher, department, etc. Usually when the SRS when the software engineering department get information from any company to build any database or any software, they usually concentrate on the on the nouns and the verbs. The nouns are usually called the entity, and the verbs are usually called the relationship, the association. For example, I can say the employee works in department. Then you can see that the works is actually the association, and the department and the employee are the entity. So entity represent the real world object. For example, it may be a student which can study in any department, is a teacher which can teach any department, and any project on which some engineer works, okay? So what are the attributes? Attributes are the characteristic or the properties of any entity. For example, student may have its name, its roll number, and its date of birth. And for example, if we discuss the employee, then employee will also have its name, okay? It will also have its date of birth, it will also have its registration, it will also have its pay, okay? So the every entity has its own characteristics and the properties which are used to build a relation, to build any table, is called the attributes. The different type of the attributes are, and in them the one is the simple attribute. Atomic values cannot be divided. So the any attribute whose value is atomic, whose value is simple, and which cannot be divided further is called a simple attribute. For example, the registration number, it is also a primary key, but it is also a simple attribute which cannot be divided further. And if there is any age, then we can't divide the age further, okay? Composite attributes are those more than one sample, okay? In composite attribute, we usually store more than one value. For example, in the name we will store the first name, okay? Also we will store the middle name, okay? Also we will store the last name, okay? So the name is a composite attribute because it has more than one values. Derived attributes are those attributes which usually don't exist in the physical database. These are not stored in the database, but it is derived from any other database. Usually we don't store age in a database, and the age is derived from date of birth. Age is derived from the database. For example, the years of service are usually not stored, or the duration of the service is usually not stored in the database, but it is derived from the date of joining. Single value attribute, the attribute which has only one value, okay? Multi-value attributes are those who may have more than one value. For example, the phone number, any person may have more than one phone numbers, and also the address, one person may have different addresses, the different cities addresses. Here the one entity relationship is shown. The entity is the student, and the student has different type of attribute. For example, one is the name, and the name is actually a composite attribute which has more than one values, and birth date is a single value attribute, and age is a derived attribute which is derived from the date of birth. Roll number is a simple or atomic value, and the full number is a multi-value because we can store more than one full numbers in one column, in one full number column. So what is key? We usually use key in it may be a collection of attributes, it may be a single attribute from the set of attributes. For example, the student have different type of attributes: the name, the registration number, the date of birth, etc. We must take one number, one attribute from his characteristic, which may separately identify it in a database. For example, we take any university student data, then we can categorize the student by their registration number, and if we take the citizen data, then we characterize the every citizen of the city of the country by their national identity card number, by their national registration number. So the super key is actually a key or a combination of key which may be used. It may be a one attribute or a combination of more than one attribute which may be used to separately identify the data. Okay, and the candidate keys in the super key, actually in the super key we take the minimal super key. It is also, it may be a single attribute, it may be a combination of attribute which may be used to identify the data uniquely. Okay, and from the candidate key there may be a different type of candidates key, but we take only the powerful key among the candidate key which may be used by the database designer, which is selected by the database designer to use it as a. So the primary key is selected by the designer of the database to uniquely identify the data. For example, in the university, the student may have their registration number, the student may have their CNIC number, okay, the student may have their roll number. In the department, the designer take the roll number as their primary key, although they may use their registration number, their CNIC number, but according to the requirement they use only the roll number. So they select the roll number as their primary key. So it depends on the situation, it depends on the designer, and they view the situation, and according to that they select the primary key among the candidate keys. Relationship. As I discussed earlier, this relationship discuss the associations of different entities. When the engineers get requirement from any company or any organizations, they concentrate on nouns and verbs. Okay, actually the people who don't have detail about the software engineering, they don't know how to separate the entities and how to associate them with each other. But the database engineer concentrate on the nouns and the verbs. And the nouns, for example, here in this employee works in department, here the employee is a noun, so it will be an entity, and department is a noun, it is also an entity. But you can see that works is a verb, so it will be an association. A relationship set, a set of relationship of similar type is called a relationship set, when similar type of relationship is built between the entities. And degree of relationship discuss the number of instances who are going to take part in the relationship. It may be a binary, it may be a ternary, it may be n-ary, etc. It is a one-to-one relationship, okay, and here is the, for example, entity 1, which is A, and here is the entity 2, which is a B, and you can see that every instance of A is making relation with any one instance of B. Okay, we may take example of student. For example, this is student, and we take example of project. We can say that only one student will work on any one project, and only one project will be assigned to any particular student. One-to-many relationship. In one-to-many relationship, you can see that here the one instance of the entity A is going to make relationship with two instances. Okay, it's going to make relationship with two instances of the B, which is called the one-to-many relationship. We can take example of a teacher and subject. Okay, one teacher can teach many subjects. Okay, one teacher can teach many subjects. He can teach networks, he can teach the OOPs, he can teach a database, but every subject is assigned to only one teacher. Many-to-many relationship. Many-to-one relationship. Here you can see that these instances are making relationship with only one instance of the entity B, and we can take example of employee. Okay, and we can take example of department. Many employees work at one department. Okay, many employees work at one department. In many-to-many relationships, you can see that two or many instances are going to make relationship with the one instance, or here from B the two instances are going to relationship with one or with many. So we can say this is a many-to-many relationship. Many instances can have a relationship with the second one, and from the second they may have relationship with the first entity. And we can take example of students. Okay, we can make example of student. We may take example of subject. One student may study more than one subject. Okay, and one subject is assigned to more than one students. Relationships will be total participations and the partial participations. When all the instances of the entity take parts in the relationship is called total participations, and if few instances of the entity are going to take part in the relationship is called a partial relationship. Generalization discusses the general entity. For example, if we take the employee and we take the student, okay, and for example we can take the driver, etc. Specialization discuss the general entity type. For example, the person specialization in the specialization person, and we can take person as a student, we can take person as a teacher. So the teacher and the student and the teacher is the spatial type of person. And in inheritance, the person characteristics their properties are taken by the child entities. For example, the person is a general entity and the student is a specialized entity. Here the person may have the name, age and gender, but these all the characteristics, all the properties, attributes of the person are copied by the student. We just add the new entity, the new attribute as a roll number, because we cannot assign the roll number to every person, because if the person is a teacher, then he may have the employer ID. If he is a citizen, then he may have a national ID card number. Okay, that was for today about entity relationship models. Thank you so much.